Hello everyone, this is Alexander here, and I would like to welcome you to my 6th art review video. I know that the last time I uploaded a video like this was like a month ago, but hey, it's better to be late than never, am I right? Anyways, let's move on. The first picture is an OC designed by a female artist from Turkey. Looking at her character, she reminds me of one of those other characters from the show called Winx Club, especially the evil ones whose names I cannot remember. But anyways, I like how the artist captured the whole theme of this picture. You can definitely tell that there's something sinister is going to happen, and it's not going to be taken lightly. Also, I like how she placed her OC in the center of the canvas, making her the main focus of the drawing. But honestly, I believe that the background she designed here is what captures my attention the most, because of its dark colors, its fluid movement, and including its interesting lighting effects. For the second innovation, what I have here is a comic with 3 panels that deals with a man drinking expired cola. Honestly, I find this method to be very dangerous since it can cause some serious harm to the body. But anyways, one of the things that I like the most about this drawing is the humor behind it. Yes, I will admit that the character's design and the object depicted here looks very unrefined, but I will give the artist some points for giving me a laugh or two. By the way, I was actually referring to the comic itself, not the person's art style of course, since that would be very rude of me to do that. By the way, I would suggest to T.Y. Grundy to use a smoother ink brush to prevent the lines from looking so pixelated, and I would recommend that he should fill in the open spaces with a bucket tool or maybe a paintbrush. Next up is an illustration of a falcon that goes by the name of Haruku the Midday Sun. It features the picture as a Yu-Gi-Oh card, which I found to be pretty neat. I've actually checked out the unedited version, and when I got a closer look at the picture, I realized that the falcon's claws looks like a banana or a misshapen star. But anyways, I like how the artist depicted the bird absorbing the energy from the sun, as you can tell from the orange light that is resonating around its body. So, what I have here next is a page from a comic titled Disney Super Tales. It showcases multiple crossovers of characters from Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Pinocchio, and oddly enough, Big Hero 6. I do wish to compliment on the layouts of the panels, but the way the artist illustrated the characters looks very misshapen. I also want to point out that the proportion looks extremely way off, but the idea behind this fictional piece seems quite interesting in some kind of way. Anyways, I would recommend that the artist should lay out his ideas first as a rough sketch. After that, he should work on the measurements of the characters and their environment so that everything can be in perfect balance. For the 5th piece, it is a fan-art drawing involving Markiplier as an animatronic. I find it pretty cool that the person added these interesting features on Mark, and I can tell from my perspective that it really blends well. Also, I find the glare from his glasses to be a pretty cool effect. Don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that this kind of thing is very common, which normally occurs in anime, but in this drawing, the artist was able to pull it off just right. Now moving on to the 6th picture, which is a traditional fan art piece of the Gorillaz that was done by Seki Tak. In this picture, it showcases the 4 main members of Gorillaz relaxing in a blank area. Anyways, I find it nice that the artist tries to illustrate the original art style with his idea. I can tell that he spent most of his time illustrating 2D, who appears to be more noticeable than the other characters. Also, I realize how slightly inaccurate Noodles is depicted, but I can forgive the artist since drawing an object or even a character with such limited space can not only be difficult, but very frustrating as well. One more thing, I just realized that her hand looks off. I understand that she's holding on to Russell's shoulder, but I would suggest making her hand more into a clench or some kind of grip. Next up is a bait drawing of an OC named Asuka Kazama, who's based from this animated series called Winx Club. Honestly, there isn't that much to say about this drawing since this is just a recolor, but I will admit her clothing design looks very creative and slightly appealing. But it would be nice to see that he drew this character from scratch and possibly look up a few references from the show. Also, I'm not a huge fan when it comes to using bases, since I find it to be a hinder to learning anatomy, but I do see some potential in this artist, and I know he can do better than this. So, What I have here is a beautifully well-drawn animal that was designed by Vloxley, and I do apologize if I mispronounced the user's name. I find the anatomy of this wolf to be quite illustrated. You can definitely tell how great it looks just from looking at the character's stance and its proper body structure. Also, I like the choice of colors that she picked out, and the light blue strokes are quite fitting for its fur. Also, I don't see any flaws that I want to mention, so all I can say is great job. Now what I have here is a deviation titled Spotted Leaf by Lily 10 Star. I will admit that the picture looks adorable, but one of the things that bugs me the most is how the contrast and the exposure are raised quite high in this image. I would recommend to decrease these two elements so that the picture can remain flat with less sharpness. For the 10th piece, we're looking at a drawing that shows a new original character asking the viewers from DeviantArt their questions. I find the character design to be decent and slightly formal, but I wish that the artist would showcase more detail and possibly a bit more creativity on this character. But again, there are features that I like about him or her in this picture, for instance the hairstyle, the large eyes, and their pink small nose. Next is a fan illustration of Gumball Watterson that was drawn by this artist, who has also depicted him walking on a sidewalk with a mysterious looking character next to him. Anyways, I like how he captured the art style from the show quite nicely. Also, I definitely give him some props for his use of shading on not only the characters, but the environment as well. Also, even though this character looks small and has a very simple design, the features shown here are pretty interesting. For example, the glowing white eyes, the foggy black texture surrounding his body, and other stuff as well. Moving on is a digital sketch drawn by Overstarter. The character he drew here looks really appealing, especially since I find the clothing design to be very good and very creative as well. Also, I do want to mention some small errors that I discovered while observing this piece. For instance, the feet of the characters share a small difference in terms of height, where one foot is longer than the other one. Also, the character's head on its right side looks a bit jaggy, but I know that the small error can be fixed by erasing this section over here. Afterwards, he can use a thin brush tool to create a clean curve on the same side. Overall, it looks pretty good. Anyways, the next piece is a One Punch Man fan animation that was worked on by this artist. I've actually checked out the video in its entirety on YouTube, and I'm happy to say that the artist has done a phenomenal job on animating it. I love everything about it, from its detailed backgrounds to a slightly fluid movement of the characters. Also, I do want to compliment on the special effects he used as well. Of course, I do see some pretty common errors where the hands of the characters look slightly off in some certain scenes, but I do understand that drawing hands is the most challenging part for any artist out there. By the way, I'll post a link to his animation in the description below if anyone is interested in viewing it. Next up is a drawing titled Pinky the Funniest Robot There Is, and no, I'm not referring to Pinky from Pinky in the Brain. Anyways, this piece is from a series called My Life as a Teenage Robot, and since Jenny is the only current model of the XJ category, which is XJ9, then it's safe to say that this character right here is just an OC. Anyways, I find the drawing to be quite charming, and I do see some resemblance to Jenny. But my only concern is the overall design of the character. If it's meant to be a new robot, would that mean it's supposed to be a bit more different than the previous designs? Don't get me wrong, it does look nice, but I would like to see some possible changes or some added features on this character. But overall, it looks very nice. Okay, so what we have here is Sonic the Hedgehog. Also, this picture was drawn by UziJuice26. The picture itself looks pleasant, but there are some areas on Sonic's body that looks a bit off. For instance, his face looks like it was done with a circular tool, and I have no problem with that, of course, since I used that in my previous video and along with my other work as well. But I would recommend that the artist should erase the black curvy line that is connected to his hair. Also, I believe that the design on Sonic's name should use some more work, but if you prefer to get it done quickly while looking presentable, then I recommend going to this website called thefont.com. All you have to do is just type in Sonic's name in the search bar, and it will give you some pretty cool fonts that you may already seen before. Now moving on to number 16. What I have here is an OC with some nice colors that really reflects the autumn weather. Anyways, the character looks very lovely, but it would be nice to see this character to be more on the center of the canvas. Also, it looks weird to have her placed in that area, especially since a section of her hair looks cropped out. But I do like the background though, especially since it gives me some relaxing vibes just from looking at it. Next is a drawing done by my good friend Super Shatnick899. It showcases 3 of her OCs who also appear to be gems from Steven Universe. By the way, I'd like to point out that I find it pretty cool that she drew these different weapons particularly made for those specific gems. Again, they look very nice. Anyways, I like how the designs of the characters looks very different and very unique. You can really tell how different they are, but I will admit that their body proportions would require some work, especially the one in the middle. So, what I have here now is a drawing done by KanZone or KanZone, who created an OC with a simplistic design that showcases a variety of different colors on her attire. Also, I like how the clean strokes on this piece is kept to a minimum with no distortion whatsoever. By the way, the only complaint I have about this piece is the size of the canvas. It looks like the character is slightly cramped in a box with limited space. I would recommend increasing the size of the canvas to 8.5 by 11 while increasing the character size as well. Next is a puppet design by this artist who has done a pretty good job, to be honest. Just looking at this character kind of reminds me of one of those other characters from Sesame Street. Overall, I find this picture to be very good. So far, I have another piece that involves with another OC, but this character goes by the name of Yanbia, or Yanabaya. It's kind of hard for me to pronounce. Anyways, I saw a comment that was posted underneath this piece, and it did mention about the artist improvement. So I took the liberty to check out her art gallery from top to bottom, and I definitely agree with the user. Anyways, let's go back to the picture. I find her OC design to be quite wonderful, and I find it pretty cool that it's an animal. I like how she used flat colors to keep things simple, and especially for the background. My only concern for this piece, which is quite similar to the other artist named Circus Girl 2005, is that some certain sections are cut off, for example the character's hand and ear. But it looks good though. Now for the last piece. It is a drawing of a human character named Jack who is being held by some kind of animal. Also, I can tell from looking at the scene that this isn't meant to be a very happy ending whatsoever. Actually, I was going to provide my critique on this one, but it turns out that somebody beat me to it. So, a user who goes by the name of Aaron Sasky has said, and I quote, "I think you need to work on coloring / shading, as you can see the rash and overall harsh lines. But the anatomy is decent and you're starting to improve." I 100% agree with this person's comment, and it's quite funny how I was going to mention those similar things as well. But yeah, the drawing itself is not too shabby. Finally, that seriously took way too long. Anyways, I do want to say thank you to those for watching this video to the very end, and I do want to apologize for those who didn't get their work critiqued by me in this video. After all, I do have a lot of other drawings that I got to critique for the next video and for the next and the other ones and blah blah blah. But anyways, take care, and I hope many of you have a splendid day.